again. Thank you so much for being here with us. This is the very first session of Edu 360 webinar series. And we plan to have, packs of this as we go along. My name is Alvin Agoram. I lead the brand and planning execution team in Union Bank. I'm so delighted to be your moderator for today. As you would have found, as you have seen, we have three very special speakers today with us. And the theme of this session is parenting through the pandemic, how to reconnect with your kids at this time. So without taking too much of your time, we'll just jump straight into what we have for today. So quick background. I want to tell you about Edu 360, the platform that is hosting this session. Edu 360 is an initiative, a proposition pushed by Union Bank, and we're trying to see how we as a bank could have a positive influence across the demography of education and the landscape of education in general. We have students, teachers, school leaders, enthusiasts, and the entire universe of the education ecosystem on the scope, on the focus. And what we try to do here with Edu 360 is to, keep bringing up subject matters that relate to the sector, and we get parents, teachers, school owners, and everybody that is involved to participate. The event usually climaxes at the last quarter of every year. In October last year, we had a session in Lagos. I know I'm speaking to people all across the country, so I'll use Lagos whenever there's a need to. Yeah, so and in this session, we get all stakeholders. Coincidentally, last year, the theme for Edu 360 was education beyond walls. At the time, it wouldn't have made too much sense to those that were in attendance and those that participated. But if you look at today, our education is no more within walls. I kid you not, most schools, be it private or public, are either fully immersed in the virtual education, or they're putting infrastructure in place to come on board. Who would have thought, that we'll be here so soon? When as recent as barely 6-7 months ago, Edu 360 had a theme that was suggesting that education will soon go beyond the brick and mortar setup of physical schools. So yeah, are you correct? Are you right to say we are thinking about the future? Yes, we are, and that we are very passionate about when it comes to this sector. So quickly, we've had 2 sessions of Edu 360. We had the maiden edition in 2018, and we had the second edition in 2019. And what we've done so far with Edu 360 is just what you can see right now. We've had over close to 10,000 attendees. We had 96 very special speakers. And the caliber of the speakers are part of what you'd experience here today. We've had 23 workshops. We have 38 panel sessions. And we've had over 1,100 teachers trained on this platform. And also we've had exhibitors who are connected to the education ecosystem. Yes, so without taking too much of your time, I will quickly introduce the speakers. I know you're all excited, you're upbeat about what you're about to experience. The first speaker is Dr. Yewande Oshodi. She's a consultant psychiatrist with LUTH. LUTH is Lagos University Teaching Hospital. The second speaker is Mrs. Bola Tinubu. She's the founder of Cheche Yara Foundation. Awesome lady. And we have Yeti Williams, who is the founder of Lagos Moms, a platform most mothers are very familiar with. So quickly, the first topic for today will be on finding the balance, building mental and emotional wellness for kids. I mean, for a few of us who are fully acquainted with the speaker, she's a very, very special woman when it comes to this this space. Dr. Yewande is a consultant psychiatrist with the Department of Psychiatry in Lagos State University Teaching Hospital. She has further sought specialist training in the field of child and adolescent psychiatry. She's currently the president of Association of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry and Allied Professions, ACAPAN. She currently leads the psychosocial support team of Lagos COVID-19 response team, catering for the emotional, I underline, emotional needs of COVID-19 patients within Lagos State. It's a huge pleasure to have you here, Dr. Oshodi.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Thank you very much. So quickly, before we go on, I will just establish some housekeeping rules. Please, we're not supposed to interrupt the speaker during the course of our session. We have an administrator that will manage the microphones. However, we expect that all attendees will give feedback through the comment section. You just drop your questions, and right after the speaker's presentation, we'll take as much as we can. So the next 30 minutes, you'll be listening to Dr. Yewande. So quickly, thank you very much, Dr. Yewande Oshodi. The floor is yours now.
Thank you. Thank you again. I'd like to really thank the organizers of this event and appreciate the invitation, and also the participants for taking out time to be here, because I know that a Saturday is oftentimes a very special time that people want to use to relax and refuel. But thinking about the issues of the mental health and the emotional well-being of our children becomes priority, particularly in this pandemic season. And so over the next few minutes, we will learn, I'm believing that you're going to learn a thing or two that will be useful for you and people in your network around the issues of supporting your children and adolescents through this period. Now, this pandemic is something that came upon all of us suddenly. It came without permission. It came unscripted. We didn't have a game plan that, okay, when a pandemic comes, this is what you must do. And it came, I'm sure if we all look back, by December last year, none of us was imagining that this was going to happen. So it's really been a whole lot of learning, relearning, unlearning, adjusting, and several shifts are going on in our minds, in our lives, and in our families. So this underscores the fact that we need to take a closer look at what we're doing. Are there better ways of what we're doing, and are there things we can learn? The other thing also is, how do we provide answers, to our children that, it's okay to not see your loved ones, to see your friends and all that, and when are we going to return to normal? These are questions that oftentimes as parents we're sitting with. And unfortunately, some people have actually lost loved ones. They have lost jobs. They have lost, opportunities, it seems, in the course of this. And when people are going through that, at times it feels like it's, everything is hard. But in spite of this, it could also be an opportunity, a season that is filled with other useful, positive moments. Now, if I may go back to the previous slide, please. When our children and adolescents, ask questions about what's going on, at times we're struggling with how to answer them. In the past 2 months, we've experienced a lot of disruption, to varying degrees of our schedules, of our homes, of our, of our plans. Maybe you plan to travel, you plan to do stuff. The kids also were looking towards maybe going on holiday. So this is a disruption, okay? And while some of us may have adjusted or seem like we've adjusted, some of us may still be struggling. And at the same time, we usually, as good parents, know how to protect our children from physical harm. We put all the right things in place, you make sure that they're in the car seats, make sure that you child-proof the things. Of course, depending on the age of the child, you try and do what's in your ability to keep them physically safe. But then how on earth can you protect a child from emotional anguish and pain and the discomfort that can come with them as a result of this this pandemic? Now, our response could either be that we just try and detach ourselves, or we go into depression, or we can seek insight and pull on creativity to answer this challenge. And I'd like us to spin this experience in that way, that it's a call on us to draw on our creativity, to seek for insight, to see how we can model our responses for our children accordingly. Now, children and teens may find, it's a bit difficult to process what's going on for a few reasons. Their brain maturation, and this picture by the side shows that the brain of children continues to develop till their 20s, really. So you see the blue and purplish areas suggest more development. So that's adolescents sitting in your home, as big as they are or as smart as they may talk, could also still be maturing. That's what this is telling us. And the younger child, that informs how much they can process, how much executive functions they have. Executive functions are those thinking capacities that help us to make decisions, make good judgment. So little wonder if a child says, oh, I want to go out, I want to do this, why do we have to do this now? It's because of the level of their brain maturity, and we need to process information for them in a way that is age appropriate, okay? They also lack experience. And we all know the adage that says, what an old man can see while standing on the ground, a younger person, even when he climbs on a tree, cannot see it. So this lack of experience could also inform, I recall someone speaking about the adolescent, the early days of this pandemic, was insisting on going out, couldn't quite get this sit at home, social distance thing. And it's a bit of a challenge for them. And of course, the inherent suggestibility and vulnerability, we can easily suggest things to children. And so these could be things that, these are things that could delay the full understanding of what's going on and the full impact to these children. Next slide. Now, as we are exposed to this pandemic, can we go to the next slide? As we're exposed to this pandemic and we have our reactions and our responses, I promise you our children, I'm sorry, the one before this, sorry, yes. Our children and adolescents are also, going through that. And there's certain things that will determine why child A will respond in one way and child B will respond in a completely different way. It would include things like the age of the child, the language, of course, the way you're talking to a 5-year-old is different from that way you talk to a 10-year-old. And of course, this will inform their understanding or prior history of an emotional disorder. For example, some kids, as some of us may know, already have maybe symptoms of depression or already very anxious children. That could also, influence the level of response that you see from the child. Other things like prior history of trauma, or, an exposure to a very nasty event in their past could also color how they react to this information that they will get around the pandemic. Therefore, your response is going to be tailored to the individual situation in which relevant to your child or your teen. Now, there's some basic common responses, emotional reactions that you have from children, emotional responses. They could be irritable, particularly the adolescents could be a little bit irritable. They're cooped in, they can't see their peers, they're restricted in so many ways. You're in their space, basically, and that can't be fun for them. Fearfulness, this will be expressed, like I said earlier, to varying degrees depending on certain background pre-pandemic circumstance, okay? Anxiety, sadness, boredom, relapse or pre-existing illness. Now, I was careful to just list out the expressions of these emotional responses. These are not disorders. These are not illnesses. These are normal human reactions, okay? But what we do with them can then make the difference, going forward in whether this navigation of this pandemic can be smooth or it may be bumpy, and other things may then show up later on. Okay, next slide. Now, I hope you can all still hear me. I'm going to try and speak louder. I see a message that, the audio is bad a bit. Okay, so we need to understand the issues of, I'm just going to pick one or two of these emotional responses as is relevant to the children and adolescents. Anxiety has been described as a gateway to many mental health disorders, particularly in children and adolescents. It's been observed that oftentimes when there's a lot of anxiety resulting in an anxiety disorder in childhood, if not navigated or processed properly, it could result in adult anxiety disorders. So you see, the impact of this pandemic is not really just the here and now. It's the tomorrow, that we need to try and take care of to prevent them from getting into that space. So therefore, anxiety disorders are worth preventing, but anxiety itself is not something we can fully ward off. We must remember that anxiety is a normal reaction. It's a necessary response to stress and anxiety, and uncertainty. So it is something that it is uncomfortable, but with most of the discomfort that we learn in life, we can learn to tolerate it and find ways to ease them off, so that we can move on. The next slide. Now, anxiety is that experience that we've all had, where you're a little bit panicky, you're feeling afraid, you're not sure of tomorrow, you're just worried. Mommy, when is this going to end? Mommy, am I going to catch these germs? These are questions that can come, and they may just be pointers of anxiety going on in the heart and the mind of the child. Now, the anxiety disorders, which are not disorders, okay, they're diagnostic entities. Remember, I said that anxiety is different from an anxiety disorder. It's one of the most common psychiatric conditions in children, and it's a lot more common than we thought. And oftentimes we find it in adolescents, around the age between ages 13 to 18, and often the onset is around 11, and at times it could occur even earlier. So I know that we're in an environment where we think a lot that, oh, can children actually have emotional disorders? And we don't want to acknowledge it if they're present. Now, the point of this is that if it is present and the anxiety persists longer than is normal, just normal anxiety, we must be willing to get that person or that child assessed, because the way we handle it can determine long-term outcome. That's the importance of this. If it's not handled well, the anxiety will continue, and then disorders occur, and it goes on and on into adulthood. Go on, next slide, please. So the anxiety disorders is something that is treatable. That's what I want us to understand, okay? Many cases of childhood anxiety, like following a pandemic like this, will simply, fizzle out and go away on their own, okay? And if they don't, if a person does have an anxiety disorder in childhood, then they're likely to develop one as an adult. That is the context of this, of how this, the trajectory of how these things can play out. Unfortunately, when cases do not resolve and they get more severe, they become anxiety disorders, mood disorders, and even substance abuse disorders. So what is happening to our children now, this exposure to this pandemic, the anxiety they're experiencing, our support for them through this period and beyond is going to play an important role to their own emotional outcomes in later childhood and later adulthood. And knowledge is really power. You can go to the next slide. Knowledge is power. Once we're aware now, we can pay a bit more attention to things and just check in with our adolescents and all that. The other thing about the emotional response of children in a pandemic is that, there is a further risk of cyberbullying. Now we have a lot of the world is now on the internet. Even children, the adults, the adult, everyone's on the internet. The internet that normally be like, no, I don't want you to be on for so long. You want to structure the time. Everyone's on it. Even we are almost overusing it ourselves as adults, So you have the already vulnerable children who are normally anxious and more likely to be bullied, than other kids, okay? And there are some of them that are even already being cyberbullied. I hope we know that for school-going children, bullying is one of the greatest exposures that they have long-lasting mental health effects on them. And we do find situations where kids are bullied to the point that suicide. Then you have the other group of young people who are also struggling with this whole pandemic, this whole sit at home. Then online distractions make them want to utilize the online world much more. But however, research has shown that the persistent and increased use of the internet may be an indicator of deepening isolation and depression. So we need to be checking so that we don't have an overload. Anything that is good that comes into excess use can actually. Hello, can you hear me? Hello? Okay, I think my mic went off. I hope I'm back.
Okay, I think we lost her for a bit.
Yes. More than half of the children who live in an anxious period, the thing really is that even though we're parents, we're human beings, and some of us are anxious. Some of us are anxious, even the best of us. And, those of us that are Christian, you know that there's even a scripture that says, be anxious for nothing, but this is what you should do instead. That acknowledges that there is a human emotion called anxiety that people may, show up with, depending on what they're faced. And some of them may even meet, some of these parents, some of us as parents may actually meet criteria for anxiety disorders ourselves. But the downside of this is that the children are also watching. They're watching, they're soaking up your anxiety. They can sense it in your voice, they can see it in your eyes, they can feel it in the way you're doing things. And really, most kids that meet criteria for anxiety, when you check, some of their parents may actually be anxious parents, and they have, somehow inadvertently, passed on the anxiety to the children. And this is not to blame parents, okay? But this is, remember I said we need to be insightful and we need to be creative, okay? So yes, we may be sitting with our own anxiety that you're trying to work around and cope with, but be mindful of the fact that the kids are soaking up what they're seeing you do. They're modeling, they're observing, they're learning, okay? So, and also in the face of anxiety-provoking situations, we may tend to fuss a lot, overprotect our kids. It's been described as helicopter parenting, where you're just like, just almost micromanaging their every move and bubble wrapping them so that nothing bad happens to them. We need to just be aware of this, and because that can actually be counterproductive and anxiety provoking long term. So our early parenting style right now in this pandemic and generally can also affect the outcome of our kids' emotions. So what's your parenting style like? Are you aware of your own strengths and possible deficits? And I promise you probably do all have them to varying degrees, but knowledge is always power. The more you learn, the more you can check some of these things in yourself. So how do we communicate to an anxious child or teen about coronavirus? Now, this may not apply to your child is suffering from a known disorder already, because in that kind of case, that person needs some more professional support. But I'm just talking about regular kids who, that may be anxious. Remember, anxiety itself is not bad. It's something that people can go through, and you can help to get out of the system with just focusing and talking about it and, normalizing some of these things. Next slide. So I'm just going to run through a few tips, and this list is by no means exhaustive. It speaks to several things that we can do to tackle or to communicate to your children about what's going on. You need to model calmness. Remember I said that they are looking at you, they're learning from you, they're observing you. This is the most important and impactful form of communication to your child and your teen. They're watching very keenly, and they're not going to watch and say, "Mommy, I'm watching you," or "Daddy, I'm watching you." But they can sense it. To model calmness, it can come in your voice. We're going to be fine. This is going to pass. We do what we need to do. And they need to have that sense of safety, and that calms their own potential anxiety. Maintain normalcy as much as possible. Try to adhere to usual routines and schedules in the household as much as possible. So we are all locked in. We were all locked in. Some of us have been released a bit, but it's still on the house. Things doesn't just become chaotic. because, we've had to have the kids at home a lot longer than they usually are. We need to listen actively. There's a way that we can be dismissive when the children want to talk to us. That's not what is needed at this point in time. We need to actively listen to them. Let them see that you're paying attention. Okay, show them that you're present and interested in hearing their thoughts and feelings. Actually, even check in. So how are you doing? How does this make you feel? What do you think about what's going on? What it tells them is that they can approach you when they have some challenge or difficulty, when their thoughts are worrisome or they're struggling in any way. But when they're trying to communicate to you and you appear distracted, disinterested, what you're telling them is that you don't really care, that they can't count on you, that you won't understand. And we see that a lot in child and adolescent mental health, where sometimes kids really cannot speak to their parents, and it's when they come into sessions that they can ventilate certain things. It's important that we validate and acknowledge those feelings when we hear them. It's not enough to just listen and then be dismissive of them and say, you're a baby, or be a boy, grow up, or something like that. No, it's important. Validate those feelings. Let them know that even you struggle at times, but there's a way you manage it, and be careful not to dismiss it. Don't invalidate it. Don't make fun of it, okay? And when you do that, you make them feel there's a sense of self-esteem that comes also that, I'm important, my feelings are important, and I can actually talk about them to loved ones when I do experience them. Help them sit with anxiety. Like we said earlier on, anxiety is a response to stress, to the experience, to something uncertain going on. So it's almost like a normal response. For example, if I like to give the example, it's a bit far-fetched, but if a lion comes into the room where you are now, God forbid, there's a way you're going to feel. Your heart will start beating fast, you start sweating. Some of you will probably try to run out through the window or something like that. These are all, it's almost like the normal reaction just kicks in, okay? And the stress hormones are released and lots of things go on after that. But at times, just encouraging your child to practice sitting with what they're going through, that, well, it's going to pass. We all feel afraid at times, and eventually things will get better. Rather than completely saying, ignore it, it doesn't exist or something like that. Let's just acknowledge it and then help them to find things that they can do while they're riding that wave. It's a wave, it will pass and they would be fine, okay? And it doesn't define who they are or the rest of their life. Normalizing this experience is important. We should help them to know the fact and direct them towards the fact. We should not just allow them stumble into all sorts of information, because they're checking. They're also checking. They could be going to crazy sites that could be giving wrong information. So have that conversation with them. Be proactive. Don't think that they understand it, or I don't want to talk to them. I remember early days of this pandemic, I'll tell I'm a doctor, I work in a hospital. My husband's a doctor, he works in a hospital. And we come home and the kids want to be all touchy. And you're like, we need to try and keep some distance, And I saw that my youngest son was he felt a little bit being pushed away. So we have to have a real sit down on this. Then let's talk about this. This is what's going on. This is the effect of this pandemic. We must be safe. We go to work. We could get, in contact with anybody there. When we get back home, we need to just try and make sure the whole home environment is safe. So we're doing what we know to do and remind them of what our faith says, because we are people of faith, and I'm sure we all have our different faiths that we hold on to. So that almost normalizes, and then they understand and they can cooperate a little bit better with what is going on, okay? So let's give them the facts so that they're not getting the wrong information or fake news. And every other site you go to, it's full of fake news. We all know that, we've seen that. So even we ourselves need to pick the right site, information source, and just stick to one or two, and not experience an overload with it either. And help them practice relaxation, strategies, breathing techniques, taking walks, listening to music, whatever works for them. You can do it as a family intermittently. Can we go to the next slide? I think I have a few more minutes. Should be running through now. So as we, having gone through the tips of communicating, how do we intentionally parent at this time? Because we all have a lot going on. I mean, many of you are working from home. And even if you are not working from home, the work is somehow several times busier this season because maybe you're having to do shifts to prevent too many people at work. So what can we do? We must be mindful of the children. The children can easily fall through the cracks if we are not thinking about them. First of all, it's important to consciously build a sense of self-efficacy. When we think about mental health and mental health outcomes and of children and adolescents, there's a word that is important. It's called resilience. Resilience is that ability of, a material to bend under pressure and to return back to its original shape, after the pressure is released. So how resilient are we? How resilient are these kids that we're raising, these children that we're raising? So we must begin from little things. You're having a sense of self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is knowing that, I can do certain things on my own. I'll be fine. I don't need mommy and daddy to do everything for me. For example, they may want to be with you. They may want your attention 100%, depending on their age. At times it's okay to just say that, I can't do this right now. I'm sure you'll figure this out. Of course, you'll have provided options for them so that they don't think because you're at home, it's 100%, of your time that they're going to have. It's part of self-efficacy to allow them to have their own space and help them to understand, to also give you your own space. This is not to say that you mustn't make quality time for them, but we want them to understand in spite of what's going on, they are also individuals and they have capacity to do certain things on their own. Some screen time is okay. I know that we're all using it, and it may be okay to relax the rules a bit at this time, but still we cannot overuse it. They can't be on the screens, all day long, all night long. We still need to have some rules. Yes, a bit of relaxed rules because now they're stuck at home for several months, but we must utilize it well. So they will be learning an important life skill if we can build their self-efficacy. So that's the first point. Now the second item on the list, if I could just get to that next slide now, says, I'm sorry, someone else is transiting my slide, so forgive me if I'm a little bit slow waiting. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you for that. We should also help achieve learning in creative ways. Yes, they're at home. Yes, there's homeschool going on, but they are sick and tired of learning and homeschool, and it can't stop. But can they also learn in other ways, okay? So yes, homeschool should go on because, this would have been school time, but are there other creative ways you can help them to learn, first of all, about COVID-19 itself, and also about other things. For example, cooking together, reading recipes, there's literacy there, weighing the materials, there's some amount of math there, some science is also there. Using board games, okay, that could also be a learning opportunity. It's a rich way to teach them math, and it can also build their important socio-emotional skills, just interaction-wise and all those soft skills that can be useful going forward. And we need to intentionally think about and create this. You need to actually intentionally say, okay, I'm going to get this game, or I'm going to schedule this into their day. It could be a certain day of the week, but let's grab this crisis and convert it into an opportunity for our children and for ourselves. The next slide. I'm going to move a bit faster now because I wouldn't want to overdo. So I just have a few more minutes, okay?
Have just 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Exactly. So I'm speeding through now. We must help them understand your own family rules versus other family rules. Let it not be like, oh, you're mommy and daddy, you're just not letting us go out and have fun. Let them understand this is what we do to keep safe, and you're part of this program. Then organize your own work from home strategies, okay? Let them know your routine, sensitize them, schedule the time of work if you're still working from home. Separate yourself from that for that period of time, and learn to self-preserve. You may need to take a break to relax from time to time. So organize yourself. You can't just say, I'm working from home and it's all over the place. You're working at 10 p.m. and all that. Think about that carefully so that they still have you for some time. And we should also limit and monitor the news, media, and exposure, okay? Because at times it's too much. It's too much an overload. So for even older kids, you need to monitor and guide what they're watching about this pandemic. Next slide. I just have about 2-3 more slides and I'll be done. If we can move to the next slide, please. Okay, If there's a need to consult and collaborate with healthcare professionals, please do so. If you're worried about your child's emotional well-being or response, they're moody, they're withdrawn, they're not communicative, they're losing appetite, you may want to check maybe something else bigger than just anxiety is going on. Next slide. And the one important thing is you must look out for yourself. I think that's probably my very final comment. But quality time, make out time and make sure it counts. Develop a daily routine. Your everyday cannot be every day. They say, what's today's date? Don't say it's every day. It's like, no, today's Monday, tomorrow's Tuesday, it's Wednesday. Let every day have a clear structure. Give a structure to it. Next. Is there anyone else? All right, so they ask a lot of questions. How can we keep from getting it? There's no guarantees. Hand washing works wonders. When is it going to be over? Just be honest. I don't know. It's fine to say that, but give them reassurance. What we can do meanwhile, we can be busy, we can stay safe, we can trust God. Oh, I'm bored. That means that they want something to do that's fun. Have them design an activity choice list in advance, so they pick from that list when they are bored, instead of stressing you out. Next. Okay, is there any more? Take care of yourself, okay? You're number one. You must take care of yourself. Sleep well, find ways to decompress and take breaks. Take a breath, take a walk. At times when you're overwhelmed, just take a few seconds out, take a deep breath, and then, reset and come back in, okay? It's not permanent. How will I feel about this tomorrow? It's oftentimes not as bad as it looks, okay? Yes, on that note, I think I should be done. So remember, we must all remember as parents that this will surely pass. Knowledge is power. I've said that over and over again. Literally it is, okay? Engage intentionally with your children. Remember, there's a lot that's still in your control, and children are also learning and making memories from you. So allow that to be done positively through this period. Yes, I want to say thank you very much for your attention, and that is the end. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Yewande Oshodi. I actually wanted to clap, but I realized it was an online engagement. So it was very informative. It was very insightful. It was awesome. As a parent myself, I could easily connect to. Actually took screenshots of some of these things because I need some of these responses to give my children.
We all need it. We all need it, honestly.
Thank you so much, madam. So we'll quickly jump to the Q&A sessions right now. I have a couple already. This one came pretty early, so I have the privilege of putting it first. Now, how do you handle a difficult child? Sorry, we don't have the name of this attendee. How do you handle a difficult child after talking sensibly and advising your child, and he or she just wants to be difficult and spoiled? How do you handle such a child?
Okay. I can feel the distress already, even in the question, because the child, it's almost concluded that this is a difficult child. But I promise you, as long as it's still a child, there's still that little window to still, manipulate and change something, okay? Oftentimes, we talk about personality being formed from age 18. Till a child becomes 18, the personality is still in evolution. You can already see some traits in children from early on, but depending on how we parent, and I don't know the full context of this question. I know it's hard to give the full context, but just a few things that at times it may be a function of our own parenting. There may be strategies we're using that we need to change. And every child is different. You may have 3 children, and each of them is as different as their faces are, or as their, as their names are, literally. So you may need to rethink what those strategies are. But I'll tell you, and I tell myself, remind myself, we must be consistent in our parenting. You want to change behavior, you need to be consistent. You cannot say, a child, you say, I'm going to wound you today. Of course, you're not going to wound the child, You must just think about what the consequences will be for a misdemeanor, and let that consequence measure up to that thing. You don't overkill issues. And if you are consistent with parenting and correction, you may gradually see a shift. And as parents, we need to really try not to give up. I know that there's that child that's always pushing the boundaries, and almost exhausting you, you know. But we have to just hang in there, be consistent, and let them, give them feedback. Many times, all we do is complain. When was the time you just told that child, wow, you did this, I'm proud of you, well done? You know, you have to commend them. In fact, almost make an effort to look for an excuse to commend them, because many times all we do is complain. I'm the chief complainer in my house, you know. And so many times I need to just step back, remind me, okay, this child, I must find an excuse to praise this child today and just have a pleasant moment. You need to have that substrate you can touch still in the heart of that child that will make that child want to make adjustments. I'm not sure I've answered everything, but that's just an idea.
You did. You actually, in the process, you answered a couple of other questions you have already.
Yeah.
But there's this very interesting one. I wish I had the names of the attendee. And the question is, in a situation where isolation has to take place of a parent,
Yeah.
how do you manage your child being in the same home with you? And I mean, I was happy to see this because I mean, you are on the task force for COVID-19.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you for that question, and that's a practical question. We will be naive to think that there are people on this group that maybe have not had reason to be exposed to COVID-19 or have a diagnosis or have recovered and all that. In the course of doing this work, what we do, my team, we have a team about 60, and we reach out to people at different stages. I'm not sure it's everyone that has been diagnosed that ever came through us, but quite a few, at least to date. We've reached out to almost 1,800 people. They get their diagnosis broken by someone from our team, let them know that this is what's going on. It's not a death sentence. You may need to be evacuated. This is what's going to happen. The evacuation team will come soon to pick you up. And I promise you, we see a wide range of reactions, from abuse to swear to cry to acceptance to just like, it's okay, I knew it anyway, I'm ready. So, and that just goes to how distressing this whole experience is. Now, there is a group of some people in that group that have refused to be isolated, refused to go in. And I know that some of them actually did recover while at home. But what I know that some of those people did would be they'll evacuate the whole house, you know, and maybe they're alone, or they leave the house and go and isolate somewhere. Or you see that there are several models, and this is not what the state asks people to do, but that's what we've seen some people do. Or they just, if they happen to be in a house that's big, they stay in a room throughout for those 2-3 weeks, and all the family does is just put a tray of food at the door, and they're in there, you know, self-isolating throughout the whole thing, because it's hard. You don't want to, people are afraid of infecting their family, their children, their parents that may live with them, and that's really why the state says people should come into isolation, you know, for treatment, so that at least we can reduce the spread. So I think we just need to talk to the children and let them know what's going on. I remember a mom that was in isolation with her children, and we spoke over the phone as part of the support sessions that we give people during admission. And I said, how are the kids? I had to video call with them. And these kids, it was like they were on a holiday. They said, I'm having fun. They did it, and she said that she actually prepared them that we're going to have to go in, came positive with this thing, and we'll be fine. And so the way, like I said, they're watching. They could see that mom was calm and had it together, and they navigated. And, you know, they spent about 10, 11 days, and they went home. And I've seen that a lot with some parents and kids that we've had to admit. The way the parent manages, you know, goes a long way to how the children manage. So never think that the kids are too small for you to talk to them. Please talk to them, but just remember that you need to be age appropriate, and you need to just take away all the elements of potential fear from them and reassure them, and they'll be fine, because they trust you. They trust you. They trust your judgment. They trust that you look out for them, and I'm sure that you will. It's just for you to reaffirm that to them.
So thank you so much for that. One final question is from Mabel. Mabel says, for a 4-year-old child, what are the red flags to know if the child is experiencing anxiety or if he's just acting his age?
Okay. Remember what I said about being anxious? It's a feeling, the same way at times people are fearful, people are happy, people are sad, it's an emotion that could happen. Oh, I feel afraid about something. Oh, I'm worried about tomorrow. How is it going to be? So anxiety in itself is not bad. I mean, there's some kids, they want to talk in front of their class. They're a little bit anxious. Mommy, how will it go? So that's fine. But when it goes beyond, it's out of proportion to what's the issue that they're anxious about, then you begin to wonder, could this actually be an anxiety disorder? For example, you've prepared a presentation with a child and the person just completely is mute in front of the class, cannot say anything, cannot do anything completely, it may be more than just the normal anxiety. The child may actually be having an anxiety disorder, or they start having nightmares, they cannot, stay in the room alone. There is some, I like the way the question was phrased, that there are some certain things that are appropriate to the age of the child. For example, to say, maybe, I hope there's no, what do they call it? There's no monster under the bed. A 4-year-old could say that, maybe because they're watching cartoons, but a 10-year-old saying that, I feel there's something in the room, I really can't sleep, I'm afraid, then you'll be worried. So you're looking at age appropriateness of what their fears are and just reassuring. And if despite your reassurance, it's beyond what you expect for that age, or it persists beyond that certain period of time, then you may want to have an expert just take a look and see what's going on. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This one, how do you stop a child from overeating?
Overeating. Well, how old is the child? Is it really overeating? It's the job description of adolescents to overeat because they're growing. So we need to just, pace it well. And they're bored at home. At times the eating is out of pure boredom, Normally, maybe you buy 2 loaves of bread and you have a half left over for breakfast in the house when the whole family eats. In this season, they're going to finish everything. They'll be snacking with it. And I don't really think that will be a problem. It's just that you need to show up your supplies a bit more because you have hungry kids in the house. Okay? And depending on the age of the children, you may experience it a bit more than others. Now, some people just like food. As it happens in adults, there are some children that just like food. They're foodies and they're chubby, they may be a bit overweight and all that. I'm saying all this to normalize it so that we're not thinking it's a sickness. Now, having said that, there are some conditions where some children actually have part of the illness presentation could be overeating. I'm not sure that would be your job to differentiate it, but if there are worrisome symptoms, for example, there's some kids that have some genetic disorders that will overeat. Morning, night, middle of the night, they're going into the freezer, they eat everything, they eat leftovers. Now that is really abnormal. Just that they're eating your house empty a bit more because they're stuck at home. I wouldn't be too quick. Apart from letting them understand the economics, the fact that they need to be, considerate about their eating. I experience it in my house. There's certain things I buy, they finish it before the due date. So at times you need to maybe put some things away, practically speaking. We're all Nigerians, You may have to have that special cupboard where you put some things and put away if they're not cooperating with you, and let them know that, okay, we're going to have this. This is for tomorrow. This is for lunch. This is for... And talk to them about, it's part of growth. Remember I said about being creative and using this time well. Letting them know to be considerate to other people in the house is an important life skill. And I promise you, it's not the first time you tell them that they're going to get it. You probably need to repeat it again. You need to be calm. You need to not let them get you worked up as a parent, because you can't afford to burn out doing this. You have to stay the whole haul and make this work for you and for them. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yewande Oshodi.
Thank
to
you.
everybody who have more questions, I'm sure in the course of her responses, she already answered some of them. And a couple of us want access to this slide. This video, this session will be hosted on our YouTube channel. So please feel free after the session to go back and skim through areas that particularly catch your interest. That is all we'll be able to take for this topic. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Putting it together.
I'm grateful for all the participants.
Yeah, thank you. And all the best.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye, everyone.
Okay. For those of us just joining us, we are very, very happy to have you on board. We just had the first session handled by Dr. Yawande Oshodi. And as if you had listened to the sessions, you would have seen how rich the content she had for us was. So quickly, we won't take too much time. We jump straight into one topic that for me is so sensitive. I have no knowledge, on how to go about this. And we'll have Mrs. Bola Tinubu to take us through the next session on the topic, a guide to sex for parents, to sex ed for parents. One topic that I know most of us, most of the time, shy away from. I'll quickly talk you through Mrs. Bola Tinubu's profile. She is the founder of Cheche Yara Foundation, an award-winning non-for-profit organization established in Nigeria, and it was Nigeria's first free child helpline for child advocacy center, providing free emergency intervention, legal, medical, and psychosocial services to children who have been sexually abused. Tinubu is a corporate lawyer and a partner in the Nigeria law firm of Olajide Oyewole LLP, where she leads its corporate practice. She's a chartered governance professional and actually the only chartered director in our country, Nigeria. We're so privileged to have you in our midst, Mrs. Bola Tinubu.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, so we apologize. We kept you waiting for a bit. We kind of overshot our time in the last session, but I could understand. It was pretty interesting. I apologize on behalf of myself and everybody that had questions to ask. So quickly, a reminder for those just joining us, the basic house rules. Your questions you drop in the question and answer tab, and we'll take them right after Mrs. Tinubu's session. We try to pocket the questions into, similar questions into the same category so that, in a way, the speaker is responding to as much as possible at the same time. So at this point, I hand over the floor to you, Mrs. Bola Tinubu. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for inviting me to talk about this topic. It's an extremely important topic for me. And today we'll be talking about how to engage children about their sexual health. So to give you an overview, I will talk about what sex education is, why it's important, and I'll take you through the strategies that you can use throughout your son or your daughter's childhood. So that's from being a toddler through early childhood to late childhood and into teenagehood. Now, the first thing we need to do is not to put too much pressure on ourselves as parents. Just because we're parents, it doesn't mean that we're experts at educating our children about matters relating to sex. However, we must learn about it so that we can help our children to navigate through all the mixed and confusing messages that will surely hit them throughout their childhood, particularly through popular culture. So what is sex education and why do our children need it? So sex education is the teaching of all the issues that relate to human sexuality, including, of course, emotional relations and responsibility, but it also includes anatomy, sexual activity, reproduction, consent, reproductive health. So there's a whole host of issues relating to sex and sexuality that comprehensive sex education should cover. And all these are critical to the children's sexual well-being. Now, let us try to break this down to the children's level. What does it really mean to them? And the things that will run through our discussions today will include teaching them to be in control of their bodies, who interacts with them in sexual ways, understanding consent, understanding your parental and the societal values regarding sexuality. There's a special concern that is particularly connected to sexual education, and that's child sexual abuse. 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 10 boys in Nigeria will experience sexual violence before they reach the age of 18. Now, while adults are absolutely responsible for the protection of children, what effective sex education does is that it will make children less vulnerable to sexual abuse. And this is why. Our child helplines receive calls every day regarding children as young as 2 sometimes being sexually abused and raped. And what we find is that children of, let's say, 7 years old, that you'd expect to know their body parts, aren't able to say or to describe what happened to them because they simply haven't been taught about body parts and they simply didn't understand what was happening to them and that it was sexual abuse. So sex education not only teaches them to recognize advances of a sexual nature, it actually empowers them and gives them the skills to express themselves and to seek help. Now, what are the things that we need to be thinking of or thinking about as parents? Some children would have started asking questions about sex by the time they're 6 or 7. By 8 or 9, they may have an interest, they may have formulated some kind of a theory as to what it is. And many children would also have made the link between reproduction and sexual pleasure. And these are children, they will be going to school every day, basically full of guesswork and curiosity. Now, when we talk about these issues relating to sex and sexuality with children, it shows them that they can trust, they can talk with trusted adults. So your family structures and dynamics should lay the groundwork for children to feel okay about their bodies and their body functions and to feel confident to ask questions and seek help. So children will need age-appropriate information about bodies, puberty, sex and reproduction. And this is not one big talk, but lots of little conversations that are then repeated. And because puberty brings about such dramatic physical and emotional changes that may be frightening, and they will be frightening to an unprepared child, your talks will need to include topics such as the stages of sexual development, what to expect during puberty, sexual responsibility, and that kind of information. So how do we start this conversation? The truth is that sex education for children mostly occurs in the way we talk about body parts and body functions. So for instance, how we teach children to take care of their bodies, how to respect their bodies, how to protect their bodies, and thinking about the right answers, like to questions like, oh, where did I come from? What is sex? Those questions are more about how comfortable your family is talking about such topics, and rather than there being an actual perfect time to talk about it. Now, the reality is that there is no question as to whether our children will receive education about sex. Whether we like it or not, they will learn about sex. The question that we should be asking is, how are they going to learn? What are they going to learn? And who actually does the teaching? So where should your little boy or your little girl learn about sex and relationships from? And you have a choice. It can be social media, it can be porn, friends, schools, doctors, nannies, or pastors. What it should be is clearly an educated and responsible adult. That's who they should be learning from. And that adult is you. You may not realize this, but parents are the single most important influence on a young person's sexual decision making. So you need to set yourself up as that trusted adult. You should try to be their #1 source of information using age-appropriate language. That means being honest and answering their questions. By answering their questions, you're giving your child a message that they can talk to you about anything and that you are a reliable source of information. Now, this is a good thing, especially once they've started having contact with other children. Now, I have to give you a word of warning, which is, and it's from someone who's been talking to her children for 25 years, and I'm still talking. Get ready to repeat yourself, because they easily forget, and sometimes they don't understand you. The first time you talk about it, they may only just hear part of it. So it's important that you don't forget to ask them what they mean when they're asking you these questions so that you can actually give the right answer. Now let's start with babies and toddlers. Now with them, it's not really sex education, is it, at this stage? But they do need to know the names of the different body parts. So for example, the boys have penises, the girls have vaginas. So you start talking about the functions of our body parts. Urine comes through your penis or your vulva, poo comes through out of your bottom or your anus. And if they're anything like my children who like being naked all the time when they were younger, then you have to start introducing body boundaries about nudity. There is a time and a place to be naked. Of course, when you're having a bath or being examined by a doctor. And the process of talking about these matters to start before they're actually verbal, before they start talking, which means that you are incorporating the proper names for genitals into everyday activities like bath times. And they do need these words to communicate with you if they have any health issues or any injuries. So teaching your baby the anatomically correct term for her genitals may sound a bit daunting, I get it, but when you're casual about it and you treat those terms like any other word, like hand or leg or ankle, then it means that you're just being very purposeful with your language now, and you're setting the groundwork for easier conversations on sex education later. Now, as we move on to early childhood, and that's age 2 to 5, a major focus for this age group is learning about boundaries, what it is and what is not appropriate when it comes to touching or being touched by other people. And this is fundamental because it is critical that even young children learn to ask before they touch someone else. So lessons around touch-based games like tickling and setting your boundaries, like telling a child when it's okay or when it's not okay to climb onto your lap. All that helps to create a more intuitive and natural understanding of consent. Now, for this age group, names of the body parts and the differences between the male and female body, as well as the similarities actually, are important. So you need to also talk about body feelings, and you explain that the body has inbuilt mechanisms that generate feelings to safe and unsafe touches. So if your mom gives you a hug, you feel nice and warm and tingly. If your lesson teacher violently pulls you onto his lap, immediately your body will tell you that something is wrong. You have all these weird feelings that alert you to danger. And it's also at this stage that we introduce privacy and private parts. So some parts of the body are private. These aren't for the whole world to see or touch. And they have to respect each other's privacy. So for example, if your bathroom door is closed, they should knock and ask if they can come in, even at this young age. They also need to know that they are entitled to privacy as well, like when you go to the toilet or when you bath or getting dressed. So we have to teach them that the conversations about bodies are for private times at home with their parents, and they're uh, not playground fodder, so to speak. Also teaching the children that they have a say over their bodies also helps them with keeping safe. So while you don't need to be explicit, now is the time that you should telling your child that other children or adults should never ask them to try and touch their genitals. And it's important to assure the children that they can tell you about any inappropriate act at any time, even if they previously kept it a secret. At this age, children can be very curious about each other's bodies. So it's important to acknowledge this inquisitiveness and to use it as an entry point to try and discuss your family goals and values. You should also try to be alert to these type of opportunities that open up the discussion, so that it just makes it more natural, it flows a bit better, and it's not this huge conversation they're having with the children. They, when it comes to babies, it's also at this stage that babies may ask how they are made. And the easiest and the most inclusive answer is to tell them that, look, there are lots of ways. It's absolutely important not to lie. And the most important thing to do is to actually follow up with these questions and not just clam up and refuse to talk about them. So tell them, yes, all living things reproduce. Trees drop seeds, dogs have puppies, humans have babies. And then you start to point out examples of reproduction when you see it. So you tell them, see, a baby is growing inside that woman or mommy's tummy, and you can get specific about more details later on as they get older. But for now, you can tell them, yes, it takes both a man and a woman to make a baby, but we also tell them that making babies is for adults and it's not what children do. So we get into that habit of reminding them of this every time we talk about it. Now, some of the most important things that we should also teach them are that they are the boss of their own body, and I use that word, they are the boss of their own body. They have a right to say no to who can touch them, and that includes you. They don't have to hug or touch anyone if they don't want to, and vice versa. But you also have to tell them that, of course, there are some times, there are reasons where an adult may need to look at or touch their body, like a doctor or a nurse, or you when you're giving them a bath. So you just have to teach them that you don't keep secrets about body. You can distinguish between good secrets and bad secrets. Good secrets are all about surprises and presents, and of course, a bad secret is when somebody touches you and tells you not to tell mom and dad. And you must always let them know that they can tell you absolutely anything that makes them feel funny or bad. Now, moving on to middle childhood, and this is age 5 to 8. At this stage of childhood, it's important to discuss how to safely explore digital spaces. So, and this is even if your child will be using the internet unsupervised for a few minutes. You need to establish those rules around strangers, sharing photos online, as well as what to do if your child comes across something that makes you feel uncomfortable. So while we don't need to preemptively explain pornography to them, you have to be prepared to have them stumble across it. And when they do, you just calmly explain that these sorts of websites are not safe, they're not suitable for them. At this stage, you can also speak more explicitly to them about sexual abuse. It's important for children to know about this unfortunate reality in order to protect themselves or help a friend who has experienced abuse. Indeed, we get a lot of children calling us about their friends. And how detailed this talk gets really depends on your child. So you can start with the basics, such as how no one should be touching them without their permission, and then you revisit the subject a few days later to gauge, what they've understood and how they feel. If your child gets upset, you may want to hit that pause button on this topic for a while until they're a bit older. Now, in late childhood, this is when you can now talk, you can now start talking about sexism and sexualization. And you can use examples that are found in media or even in your own community. This age is full of emotional and social changes, and girls in particular may struggle with body issues. So I encourage you to check in with your children about how they're feeling, what they're thinking, and at this age, it's really just about emphasizing over and over again and letting them know that body changes are normal. Since this age group generally has more freedom online, it's a good idea to periodically chat about internet safety and to build on the digital rules that you established earlier. So you ask your child, what do you think it means to be respectful on social media? And listen to what they say. And when high profile stories on sexting or online bullying are in the news, use them as jump-off points to ask your child how they would handle similar situations. So, for example, you can talk about the damaging effect of sharing nude or sexually explicit photos of themselves or their friends. Now, when you start to talk about teenagers, that's when you know that talking with your children about sex and sexuality earlier on in life, it really pays off big. It really does. So you're still talking about all the stuff I've spoken about, but now you're drilling down and it's in much greater detail. So for example, you're talking about the physical changes, the social changes, the emotional changes that they expect when they reach puberty. So of course, girls need to know about their periods, and they need to be prepared for that first period. Boys need to know about nocturnal emissions. They, the children need to know that fertility happens once girls start having periods and boys start producing semen. They need to know that boys and girls are able to have babies after they reach puberty. I remember when I got my first period, I was 13. It was a summer holiday, and I remember my mom asked me whether I had to start my period, and of course, proudly I said I had. And I remember the phrase she said, "Oh, that means you shouldn't move near men." And that was my sex ed. Of course, by that time, I already knew the biology of the from school. So you can see that there's a vast difference to the way we were taught when we were younger to what we're hoping parents will teach their children. Now, some children are curious about sex and some aren't, and it's normal. Once puberty starts, they will slowly start to think about sex as something that they may want to do. And by starting the conversations about sex with your child, you're letting them know that, look, it's okay for them to come to you with any questions. You also want to talk about sexual behaviors. So what you want to do is to make them aware of your own sexual values, your own beliefs about love, about dating, contraception, when it's okay to become sexually active, all that type of stuff. So you also talk about what happens when puberty starts, that they may start to develop romantic feelings towards their peers, and they may receive sexual advances. You can talk about how sexuality is exaggerated in pornography, how to be cyber smart, how to use their mobile telephone safely. And then of course you must talk to them about the characteristics of a safe and respectful relationship. Now, another important thing for you to remember is that this may be your last chance to talk while your children are still willing to listen to you. Because as they enter their teens, they are starting to rely more on their friends for answers, for information. And this means that you need to continuously reinforce the fact that they can come to you and they can talk to you about anything, and I mean anything. Um, so it's important that you answer their questions honestly and you provide them with more detailed information. If you don't know the answer to the question, you look for the answer together. Don't just tell them facts, but share those values and beliefs that I spoke about earlier, especially when it comes to dating, love, sexual intercourse, and contraception. So you need to get creative and you need to find some ways to start talking with them. So give them a book. Talk while you're both driving somewhere. Talk about something that you see around or you're watching TV. You have an incredibly important role here because you're helping them to develop critical skills in decision making, in communication, in assertiveness, and these skills are so critical for them to navigate their children safely. So what I'm going to leave you with is a few tips So I want you to think about how you were taught about sex as a child. So we most probably don't want to go down that route, okay? So give age-appropriate answers. Try to keep the exchange as a dialogue. Be honest. Read. You have to educate yourself because it's not automatic. If your child hasn't asked about sex, start that conversation. Keep your cool and make sure and remember that sex education is a continuing process. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ma. Thank you very, very much. I'll leave your contact on the page for a while so that whoever needs to reach you personally could do so. Thank you so much, Dr. Bola Tinubu. Again, I'll just run through a couple of questions. This topic is one that is so sensitive, and most of us, even if we are enlightened enough to know that our kids need to know about these things, most of us lack the know-how. So this session for me was very revealing and very useful, especially as a parent. So our first question comes from Fatima Oniru, and she says, how do we talk to our children about the new work of LGBT? For clarity's sake, LGBT means the lesbian, gay, and bisexual transgender community, and it's a new normal, even if some of us are very uncomfortable with it. And Fatima says her 4-year-old saw two men kissing and asked me why. I wasn't ready to answer all those questions, so I told her one is a woman with a short hair, and my child did not believe me. Mrs. Tinubu, in such an incident, what would you recommend is the best way to respond?
Right. Remember that I said that you have to be truthful. It is important that you speak the truth. And you explain to them that families and relationships come in different sizes and shapes, and that those two men appear to be in a relationship. And keep it as simple and as age appropriate as we can. But this is not something that we can shy away from. And you want to bring up children who are open and who are not biased and who will not discriminate. So you must make sure that your own biases, you don't unconsciously transfer it to those children in answering them. So you yourself, you have to first establish your own insecurities around this subject, around this topic. Come to terms with it. And if you're not able to answer that minute, it's okay because we don't have the answers. And you can tell that child and assure the child that, you know what, I'm going to talk to you about it later and I'll answer your question. Maybe mom is a bit busy right now. Do your research and then go back to the child and tell the child the truth in a very age appropriate language. You don't have to hit the child with everything at once. No. Just keep it very, very simple. Thank you.
Now, another question from Oloro Toby. He says, or she says, there was this controversial issue some time ago about a father not allowed to bathe a female child, which is his daughter, and of course the other way around, having the wife not bathe the male child. What exactly is your expert opinion on this?
There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. This is a family situation. Again, in every family, you start to put in boundaries that are appropriate for your own family values. So for some families, going around naked up until a certain age is fine in the house. For some families, once the child is 2 or 3, yes, it's only only females that are able to bathe their children. What I will say is this, and it all depends on the family's circumstances. But fundamentally, there is nothing wrong with a father bathing a young girl child or a mother bathing a young girl child.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Just one last question, and it's How can teenage boys be taught to manage wet dreams as well as erections when they wake up in the morning?
Again, this is I've had many women come up to me asking me questions about teenage boys, and it's usually the women. Now, it's all about education. Remember that I spoke earlier about ensuring that teenagers understand what is going to happen to them from a physiological perspective, from an emotional perspective, and those nocturnal emissions are part of it. So you have to start that conversation even before they enter teenagehood. And when it does happen, you sit with them and you explain to them this is perfectly normal and this is why it's happening and this is how you should deal with it. It's absolutely nothing out of the ordinary. You have to treat it as it's the same as a girl having her period. How do you deal with that? So deal with it in exactly the same way. And what some of the women that I've been in contact with regarding these issues, they bury their head in the sand, and they just worry about it, thinking there's something wrong with their child for years and years sometimes. So there's nothing wrong with your child. So you need to reassure yourself first and also reassure him as well. So it's not so that he doesn't have serious hang-ups about something that's a perfectly natural act. Thank you.
Okay, I think that was our last question. Thank you very, very much, Mrs. Bola Tinubu, for your time. We're immensely grateful for the knowledge you've shared, and most importantly, the impact you're making both as owner of the foundation and having us having you here on this session. Thank you so much for your help. Thank you so much for your expert opinion, and most especially, thank you so much for your kindness for trying to take on this task that most of us shy away from. I, for one, I'm somebody that gets very uncomfortable whenever my child brings any of these questions, seeking answers. But this session has really opened my eyes on how best to go about this. Once again, thank you so much of everybody that's connected to this session, and the participants, the attendees. Thank you so much for being a part of us. And at this point, we'll just move straight into the final one. If you're just joining us, we've had 2 sessions earlier. We had Dr. Yewande Oshodi come on the show, and she spoke to finding a balance, building mental and emotional wellness in kids. Then we just had Mrs. Bola Tinubu speak to a very sensitive topic, and it's a guide to sex ed for parents. Sex ed is usually abbreviated. Sex ed stands for sex education. And finally, another one I'm very excited about is going to be presented by Yeti Williams, the founder of Lagos Moms. I need to say, do not be fooled by the name of the name of this platform, Lagos Moms. It's not about moms in Lagos. It's about mothers everywhere, beyond our shores, all parts of the country. They are fully latched onto this platform, and they always, extract value and content from the platform. So we have the pleasure of having Yetunde Williams in our midst. She's, again, the founder of Lagos Moms, the first Nigerian blog dedicated to moms, parents, and caregivers. She's a certified life coach and a neuro-linguistic practitioner who has taken up several speaking engagements on parenting, work-life balance, digital media, and entrepreneurship. Her company, Lagos Moms, I'm sure most women here will be smiling, holds conferences to discuss various parenting matters, and this has drawn thousands and thousands of attendees, thousands of experts and vendors all across not just the country, the world. Yeti holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Economics and Mathematics from the University of Pittsburgh, and an MBA in Strategy and Finance from Yale School of Management in USA. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the honor and pleasure of having Yeti Williams in our midst. She's going to be speaking on the topic, rediscovering your child's area of genius. Yeti Williams, over to you.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Can everybody hear me fine?
Yes, if I can't hear you, they can hear you, yes.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure sound is on. Thank you for inviting me to speak on this topic. And thanks for the lovely introduction as well. So like you said, you know, though it's called Lagos Moms, honestly, this is a platform that is available for any parent, mother, father, and caregiver. And when I say caregiver, that covers aunties, uncles, teachers, anybody at all that has anything to do with a child in their life in some capacity. So today we're talking about something that actually excites me, which is discovering. In this case, we're talking about rediscovering, but just the concept of being a genius and identifying your child's area of genius. A lot of us, when we think about genius, we think about, you know, somebody out there, somebody else, somebody who's unbelievably intelligent. So let's look at some of the definitions that exist. You know, these were just a few that I pulled. And when you say who's a genius, some definitions say it's someone with exceptional intellectual or creative power or other natural ability. Sometimes it's also referred to as an exceptionally intelligent person or one with exceptional skill in a particular area of activity. So that's some of the definitions I found. But one of the truths I want to pull out is that everybody has a zone of unique to each person. That in your flow, where you are doing the thing that you are called to do, what you were born to do, what you were naturally, what was the word I'm looking for? That's what is your secret sauce. Everybody's secret sauce, honestly, many times it has its roots in childhood. So it is when you allow your physical and mental space to come together such that your interests, passions, and skills converge to make you unstoppable. It's that unstoppable factor that makes people start to seem like geniuses or make somebody seem lucky. You know, there are some people you see, either they're excelling in whatever field and you think it's luck or you feel that it happened overnight. But the reality is that most of these people have years and years, hours upon hours of expertise, of improving themselves, of learning that skill in more detail. They're constantly always slow. They're always maximizing their interest, passion, and skills. They've continued to massage it so much that that is the role in which they operate. And everybody can get there. The reality is that there's nobody that cannot get to this zone of genius. What tends to happen is there are all kinds of things along the way that block it. No, sorry, go back. Go back. Okay, because there's so many things that come to block this natural reality, I want to talk about the next truth, which is that a child, every single child, is born with innate skills and potentials. And I want us to think about that for a little bit longer. Every single child, you were once a baby, you were once a child. Every single human being, every single child is born with innate skills and potential. The role that a parent or caregiver then has to realize that geniuses are not necessarily born, they are raised. So how do you raise a child? How do you ensure that you are nurturing what is their innate skills and potential? Since everybody has one, it's our job as parents and caregivers to ensure that we're bringing it out. So first of all, we must be able to identify it. We must be able to name it. We must be able to have an idea. Then as parents, we give them as much exposure and help to make sure that they are building on those innate skills and potentials. So this is just to break the ground, you know, to start the conversation from a perspective that every single parent on this call or soon to be parent must know that every single child has these innate skills and potentials. And that means that it's our job to ensure that we bring it out and help them to follow their dreams. So next slide, yes. So what are some of the important ingredients that go into raising and rediscovering your child's genius? I want to talk about some of these things. You know, when it comes to parenting, I like to think of it as cooking. You know, if you're cooking a pot of stew, there's so many things that must go into it to make that pot of stew tasty or nice. You must put a little bit of everything. Some condiments, you know, your base, tomatoes, onions, you know, are you going to add chicken, fish? What are you going to do? So everything has to come together. And if one or two things are either put in too much quantity or not put enough of, that pot of stew might not taste very nice. I feel it's the same thing when it comes to raising our children. We have to think about a child as a mix of different things. And because raising children is something that nobody goes to school for it, you know, you literally learn on the job. You know, you have a child, you go home with that child, and do your best. Nobody really goes to any school to learn the right way. Nobody necessarily has all the answers. There's no perfect parent and there's no perfect child. But there are certain things that more and more we're seeing that over the years, thanks to technology, thanks to the internet, thanks to research that we're able to share, we're seeing that there are some specific things that continuously show up as the ingredients that you must put into raising a child so that they turn out to be the most best versions of themselves. So let's talk about it real quick. The first one is grit. How many people know what grit means? Grit is combined with the idea that you don't give up. You know, you bounce back when things don't go your way. You know, you have the ability to continue to stay focused on what it is that you want to achieve. And this is something that children learn from very early on. So when a child is doing something and they show some frustration, what do you do? Don't worry, don't stress yourself, drop it. Or do you ask them questions to say, what exactly is wrong? Why are you frustrated? Why are you giving up? Those are the things that we can do to help them ensure that they have grit. So there's a particular book I've read on this topic because I think it's so important that we all have grit. And because children are my passion and being an effective parent is my effective intentional parent is my number one goal, I'm constantly reading. So one of the books I read here is Grit by Angela Duckworth. And I recommend that you read that book because that book talks about the importance of grit and how to raise children who have grit. So when I was able to talk to her last week and we had a short clip and I asked her, you know, what we can do, especially during this uncertain times. There's so much going on that, you know, parents nowadays we're just struggling. We have too much going on. We're too distracted. You know, there's so much calling at us. How do we ensure that the children have grit? And one of the things that we discussed was the importance that's the next point, passion. If you are passionate about something, it's very likely that you will continue to persevere and have resilience in that particular area. So that's where passion comes in. You can't have grit or perseverance or resilience without a sense of passion. Passion for either your gifts, passion for your interest, and this again starts from childhood. So we're going to continue talking about this and delve a little bit more into how you can identify your child's particular interest, because you will start to sense it from as early as 5, 6. You can start to have an idea of what your child seems to be naturally inclined towards. And then when you build on that passion, you find that they carry that over to even schoolwork. Okay. The next point is a safe and enabling environment. For any of our children to even be potential geniuses, to live the lives that they were to live, to thrive as adults, because I say it's very important for us to keep in mind that we're not raising children. What I mean by that is we are raising adults. So when you're raising an adult, you must be able to look ahead and identify the child you have today. What kind of man do you expect or envision? What kind of woman do you envision? When you envision that, it's easier to then walk backwards because now you can say, what do they need to get to that point? So safe and enabling environment is so critical. And what that refers to is the fact that the home is the haven. The home is where this all starts. You know, I call parents the biggest influencers. I know everybody talks about somebody is influencing in some capacity or the other. Parents are the #1 influencers of their children. And so when you keep that in mind, to be a positive influencer, it's very important that an enabling environment for your children. So just to ask you questions, they feel safe to explore, and you are able to help them to grow. Which brings us to the point #4, which is the growth mindset. A growth mindset is an idea, it's a mindset that says, I can learn this, I can achieve this. I might not have the answers today, I might not be able to figure out the answers today, but I know I have the capacity to do that. And it's amazing how many children have this growth mindset cut short too early. So a child who constantly hears disempowering words such as, oh, keep quiet, you are dumb. Your cousin, does she have 2 heads? Your classmates coming first, do they have 4 heads? All those things just start to shut a child down. But a growth mindset is, even if a child doesn't do something well, is to say, you know, you can do better. Can we talk about some of the things that we can work on to improve this particular skill? And this cuts across everything. So this cuts across even math and English if a child is struggling, all the way to anything else. So that growth mindset starts from home. Let's look back to the first one, safe and enabling environment. It starts from the home, the language, the words you speak. When a child cannot figure something out, don't shut them up and write them off or tell them, oh, you're just too dumb, don't worry, this is too hard for you. You want to say, okay, what's going on here? What can we do about this? How can we get better here? What kind of help do you think you need? You'll be amazed sometimes that the children know exactly what they think they need to get the answers they need for that particular, for that specific thing. And right now that all our children are learning from home, it's very important we're able to have these conversations with them, because this is a time like none before where we are 24/7 parenting. This is the reality of 24/7 parenting. The road to genius and maximizing your potential are adjacent. What that means is that we're talking here about rediscovering your child's genius, or raising a genius to begin with. And genius just means expertise, you know, abilities, honing in on your skills, your internal driving force. So the truth is that maximizing your potential, whatever your potential is, when you're maximizing that, there's no way you're not going to feel like a genius. Because when you're doing something that you're meant to be doing, you are in the zone, you are in the flow, you are going to continue to feel empowered, you are going to have the passion to persevere, to continue to be resilient, to want to be better, to keep learning. Naturally, you will start to seem like a genius. So imagine that now you teach your children from very early on what it means to maximize their potential, to teach them that each and every one of them are unique. Each and every one unique. So therefore, that means that if they continue to work on their own zone, on what makes them special, they are only going to grow up with an idea with a growth mindset that, you know what, I can figure things out. I really can. And if I don't have all the answers, nobody does, I can ask somebody to help me. Now, the other thing I want to get into real quick here is the fact that the future is different. You know, modern parenting is more challenging than the past, because I think in the past it was a bit easier. Maybe you go to school and you're supposed to, you know, they're the main topics. You know, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be an engineer, a doctor. They were kind of some preset path. What has happened now is the future of jobs, the future is so different that there are jobs that are out there today that we could never have envisioned 1 year ago, 2 years ago. So imagine that as a parent, you are not moving with that flow. You are not moving with the idea that the future is here. It's not even down there. It's actually right here now. So how are you raising your child? Is it for the past you knew, or is it for the future that's coming? So what does that mean for you as a parent? That means that you must be raising a child with a sense of wonder. And children are naturally born with a sense of wonder. Unfortunately, the environment, sometimes the kind of school they go to, sometimes the environment they are raised in can kill that sense of wonder, because maybe a child who's always asking questions is told, you ask too many questions, you talk too much, can you not just be quiet? That kills them. That kills that sense of wonder. So the one thing as parents we must do is give them that environment and that opportunity to explore. Because the more they explore, the more they do different things, the more they ask questions, the more that their minds are growing. And especially between the years 0 to 5, a child's brain is, neurons and connections are happening at such a pace that the only thing you can do as a parent is to help that. Don't step in the way and block it, because naturally that's what's meant to happen in those early years. But sometimes we short circuit it because of our comments, our own limiting beliefs and all of that. And then lastly, I want to talk about parents' vision. I mentioned a little bit earlier that you want to think about the man of the future you're raising, the woman in the future you're raising. What is your vision? There's something I call parenting vision board that I take a lot of parents through, and I've done it myself. It's very clear to me, to a large extent, what is the vision of the adults I am raising? And because I have that, and mind you, parents, this is not the time to say you're raising a child who must be a doctor. This is not about your personal desires. This is about the child you've been given, you know, what you believe your values are as a family, and where you want them to, or how you want them to. Let me give you one example. For me, I really think that it's important that children have a sense of responsibility. And as a very simple level, one of the best ways to teach this is to give them chores. A lot of people don't do chores, especially the African home, Nigerian family. Many homes have domestic help. And because we have domestic staff, a lot of our children cannot take care of themselves. A lot of them cannot do anything for themselves. But if, for example, part of your parenting vision board for your child is that they must be responsible, sometimes it's as early as 2 years old. In fact, when they are babies, you start to give them chores, a sense of responsibility. You have a part to play in this home. You have roles to play. So I keep joking, when my son makes his bed, you will think you're in a hotel. Or from very early on, from as young as 2, when they wake up, I just used to teach them, just make your bed as little, however well you can. And of course, lay your duvet. Of course, they were not doing it perfectly at that age, but they've grown up with that. And so that's really important, is for you to have a parent's vision. So these are just some of the important ingredients that I think are critical for you to keep in the back of your mind as we continue to talk about discovering your child's zone of genius and how to rediscover it if you feel you haven't. I want to talk here about the role of creativity. I hope you can see the chart that's on the screen. In 2015, the source of this table, by the way, is the World Economic Forum. So in 2015, the top 10 skills that were required to thrive in the workplace, you can see number 1 there was complex problem solving. And all the way at number 10 was creativity. Now, the World Economic Forum continued to do a lot of research. I mean, you know, a lot of the do a lot of research. They don't only do scientific research, but they do research in social behavior patterns in the workplace and all of that. What they found was that shifted so much that top 10 skills needed in 2020. And what year are we in? We're in 2020. They found that number 3, creativity. Look at number 2015, creativity was a number 10 in terms of the top 10 skills they felt you needed to thrive in the workplace. It shifted, and by 2020, it was number 3 skill that was required. So you can see how things have changed so much. You know, there's so much going on in the world, artificial intelligence, robotics, there's so much changing that one of the things that can never change is your mind and the amount of creativity you bring into a situation. Now, we mentioned earlier, children are born, we're all born creative, every single person. Unfortunately, a lot of us think that it's a talent or gift for a few select ones. However, in reality, everybody has the ability to be creative. I forget the name of the researcher now, but he did research and showed when children are really young, the amount of creativity is unlimited. Somehow, as they get older, the same test that they were giving these children, as they were getting older, they found that the level of creativity they had was dropping. And the more they did the research, the more they found out that it was dropping because of limitations the world was placing on them. Schools sometimes squash creativity. Then the home environment too can squash creativity. So imagine that you're giving a child who has so much creativity, but then somehow, without realizing it, you are squashing that because you think there's a way to do things. There's a different way that you believe a child should answer a certain question, or a child to do a certain thing is only one way. It isn't always one way. So how do we help that sense of wonder? That's part of what we want to talk about here, is that every parent must allow their child to explore, to ask questions, and you must be giving them the opportunity to learn, not only academics. There's so many ways to learn unique things, and we must keep that in mind. Last year, we had a conference, and the theme of the conference was creativity is the currency of the future. And here we are in 2020. The reality is that if you're not creative right now, you are probably struggling, because things have changed in a way that we could never have envisioned. So how are you creatively bouncing back? What are you doing differently? The workplace of tomorrow requires your child to actually be very creative. There are a lot of jobs that do not exist anymore, because machines have taken over. AI has taken over. So how are you raising a child to ensure that they will always be relevant? So these are some of the things that we want to keep in mind. And the last is being a parent of a digital native. So let me explain what a digital native is. A digital native is a child that was born, that is a child today. I mean, that sounds funny, but a digital native is a child that was born into a world where they've been connected to the internet, to technology, to digital media from day one. So a lot of us are digital aliens or in between. So you're raising a child whose first thought is digital, whose first thought is online. You give a 2-year-old today a device. I'm sure a lot of you will be surprised at how quickly or how well they can navigate that device without teaching them. So children today are wired differently. So it's really our job to enhance it and not stifle it. I want to talk here very quickly also about Isaac Newton. Yeah. So when he was back in, I think it was 16 something, he had to be at home because there was a plague going on there in the UK. And it was while he was at home that he actually developed the law of gravity. So sometimes just allowing ourselves to think and to explore and to pursue different ideas that drop in our minds is what allows this creativity to come out. Okay, so next slide, please. We want to talk now about what could be blocking your child's flow. So we've talked about the fact that genius is not something necessarily that's limited to a few people. We've talked about the importance of creativity and that every child is naturally born with creativity. It's our job as parents and teachers to ensure that, and caregivers as well, to ensure that we're helping that child to flow in that space. So let's talk about some of the things that could be blocking your child's flow, and you might not even be aware of it. So number one is a negative thought pattern. It's very important that your child's subconscious believes that he or she can achieve whatever he or she wants to achieve if they put in the work. So a negative thought pattern many times will kill a child's natural flow. Limiting beliefs is the second one. If somebody believes that they can't do certain things for whatever reason, many times they cannot do it. So as a parent, you have to realize, what words are you speaking to your children? What do you say when they want to give up on something? I'll give you a little example here. I love exposing my children to all kinds of extracurricular activities. I believe that they should be exposed to so many things and they can pick what it is that they want to do. But at the beginning of a particular term, they pick what they would like to do. And then I think it was after 2 or 3 lessons, and it's happened for both children at different stages, they just did not like that particular extracurricular activity that much. So once I found out that it wasn't something fundamentally that made them uncomfortable, maybe it was the instructor or something like that, it was just that they didn't really like it, I said, well, you have to stick with it. You have to so those lists, and many times at the end of that particular term, they come back to say, well, you know what, we actually enjoyed it. Or at the very minimum, they learned something from that. So I think it's really important to make sure that we're not importing our own limiting beliefs onto our children and letting them know that they can achieve anything. One of the third things that is really blocking our children's flow is not spending enough time on personal development. And what that means is many children, unfortunately, are in school, they're doing homework all day. There's very little time to just explore what we said earlier, their own innate interest. What time do they actually have to do that? So we have to make sure that we're consciously building enough time for that. Another issue is children not exploring more. A lot of our children do not read. They don't read. Either they're playing too much video games, or they're on digital media, or they're consuming too much, YouTube. I need to have time to read, to explore. It's the only way, number one, that they'll build their vocabulary and be able to communicate better. We've also found that a lot of children starting school today, when they start school for the first time, they're finding that these children cannot speak as many words as they expect. And a lot of what's happening is many children nowadays are consuming too much screen time. So people are not talking to them. People are not engaging with them. Their parents aren't actually making eye contact and talking to them. So they are doing so much of listening to what they are watching, but they're not hearing somebody speak to them or read a book to them. So it's really important that we must make sure that reading is still priority. Even if it's 20, 30 minutes a day, they have to read. They can't just watch screens or do online learning all day. I'm not saying there's not a benefit to online learning. There certainly is, but it can't be the only thing that they do. Not being quiet enough, the major issue. Adults, we're finding that not being quiet enough, that means allowing yourself to just sit and to just take in your environment. The average person now, they're outside, they're on their device, they are walking, they're using their phones. People are not just looking at the sky anymore. And we think all these things are unimportant, but a child who doesn't learn how to take in their environment is not going to be very creative, is not going to learn to flow, and is going to always be almost like a junkie. They always need stimulated with something. They're always going to be looking for a video game or what to watch or all of that. You need to get them to have some quiet time. And when I mean quiet time, no music, no TV, nothing loud. Give them, you can even let them go and have their own free play. So right now, where all our children are at home, what you want to do is create a schedule and create a plan within that where they have quiet time. After online learning, before you know video games and digital media and social media, let them have some quiet time, screen free. It can be as simple as go outside and jump up and down, ride your bicycle, jump on a trampoline, or even just sit on the balcony and look around and see what's happening. Some people will tell you maybe their children have never noticed the color of the house, their neighbor's house. So you want to make sure that you're encouraging them to be quiet, because life is so distracting now that it's causing its own challenges, especially when it comes to attention. Not praying or meditating, very similar to the idea of being quiet. That idea of just grounding yourself. When you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing you do? How you start your day is so important, because the morning is actually one of the most creative times in the day. But if it's wake up, rush out of the house because of traffic, there's just so much. A lot of times our children don't learn to get into a flow. Then unhealthy lifestyles is another big challenge that blocks flow or children's flow. When children are not exercising, they have bad eating habits, so they're not eating. Sorry?
We have to move quicker. We are almost out of time.
Okay,
so move with more speed. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. Okay.
No worries. So unhealthy lifestyles, excessive screen time consumption, we've talked about that already. Parenting styles not matching your child's love language. We'll get into that very quickly. There's a lot of material, but I think this was just the main setting block so that we think about the things. These are the things we want to keep in mind so that when we go off, we're implementing these. Your parenting style is really important, because if it doesn't match your child's love language, you are not going to connect with your child the right way to even be able to identify their flow. Okay, next slide. Next slide. Okay. for discover your area of genius. We've talked about the things that block, the things that are challenging, and that every child is a genius. So how do you discover your child's area of genius? Number one, start during the early years. We talked about it already. The foundation is very important. So making sure that they are between 0 to 3 and 0 to 5, you're putting the right guidelines in place, you know, the words you speak to them, exposing them to good content, making sure that they're eating the right food, making sure that any caregiver you have in the early years, such as domestic staff, many times if they don't align with your family's vision, this really causes them a lot of challenge at those early years. Morning as gold. What I mean by that is we're most creative in the morning. So when you wake your child up in the morning, what are the things you're saying to them? Start their day off with affirmations in a way that they wake up ready to take on the day. You know, don't smack them to wake up early or go into their room shouting that, wake up, you're too late. You know, you want to be calm in the morning. The power of the subconscious is so critical because whatever you that is what you would do. You know, we don't operate from our conscious minds. Majority of people on a daily basis, you are operating from your subconscious. So what a child believes is what the child will be operating in. And that's where parenting as being influencers is very critical. The things that you're speaking in. If you look at your child, I think this child is a genius. You know, the way you speak to them will be very different. You want to ask questions and you want to listen. So this is where you put your phones down, make eye contact. Too many people are not really communicating with their children. They're in the same room, but there's no quality time. So it's really important to have quality time. That's the only time you can know what they're interested in, what they're asking you questions about, right? Then extracurricular activities is so important. Please, please parents, your child does not need extra lessons all the time. They've done math and English and science in school. Then they come home, you get a lesson teacher again, math, science, English. Why? There's so much more to life now than just grades. So please encourage all kinds of extracurricular activities. This is where the kind of school that you choose is very, very important. Certain schools put this as a priority and they will help your child to explore other interests. Then lastly, you want to explore unusual ways to learn life skills. A very quick example here, I want my children to understand entrepreneurship, creating a business, market share, and all those kind of conversations. I found a show, Shark Tank, on Netflix. It's a fantastic show. The kids love it. My 10-year-old can break down a company's value now just from hearing this show over and over again. So learning doesn't always have to be only sitting down as a lesson teacher. There are many ways to explore life skills. Okay, next slide. All right, this is real quick, but this ties to, you know, what exactly it is you want for your child. And when we're talking about rediscovering area of genius, this is really important. On the left-hand side are some of the things that I listed when I thought about what I want for my children. And this is just, I want them to understand wealth and money. I explained the show that we started watching. Children that have resilience, who understand that failure is feedback. That's part of what breaks a child's flow. When a child thinks that failure is the end of the world, and that's also because of how, as a parent, you behave when things don't go your way. So if you throw an adult tantrum, your child is going to throw little tantrums. So let them know failure is just feedback. You want a child who is happy and confident, and this comes from self-esteem. A lot of children are lonely, mental health challenges are on the increase, suicide rates are on the increase with our youth and young ones. And why is that? There's no self-esteem, there's no sense of hope, there's no confidence. So they tend to give up quickly. The only way to replace that with positivity is to do all these things we've been talking about and some other ones. You want to make sure that they're healthy digital habits. This is a topic we're not getting into today, but how your child consumes content online can make develop inappropriate things, or they become a junkie to digital consumption. It's very difficult for them to do anything else. And the hormones that are released when a child gets a like on social media is the same hormones people get rather when they use drugs or they have sex. It's the same hormones. So imagine your child is overdosing on online content all the time, violent video games, everything is always online. It's horrible, and we don't realize what this is doing to children's brains. You want a child who's spiritually sound. It's important. The truth is, with what's going on, especially in the world today, if you're not grounded here spiritually, there's a challenge. You want a child to enjoy learning. You want them to be responsible, bold, and happy. These are some of my characteristics I want in a child. Then on the Gen Z side, that's a child who was born, I think I want to check the year specifically, between 1996 and 2010. That's a Gen Z or iGen. After that is something called But a child that's young understand good social media habits. I won't go into too much detail, but really, digital footprint is critical. Next slide, please. I'm rushing now. Okay, there should be one more box. There we go. I will, you know, I'm going into all the details here, but what I want to just point out here is that your parenting style can make or break the child you're raising, period. So if you are one of those typical, I'm a dictator, and because I said so, that is it. For children today, it does not work, period. There's no two ways about it. You have to be intentional. Intentional parenting means that you're combining the best aspects of authoritative, which means you are explaining to your child why you have set certain rules so they understand where you are coming from just backing and shouting. Now, these are the rules, these are why, and you explain what the consequences are. So this is just for you to figure out your parenting style. I have a quiz on my website that lets you figure out what is your parenting style, so you know if you're being effective or not. Next slide. Okay, then you want to understand your child's love languages. This is also another, it's a particular deeper conversation because every child has a love language. Every single child. There's one more bubble. There's one more bubble that needs to come in. There we go. Every child has a unique love language. When you understand your child's love language, you can combine it. I will end with one more example here and then we can do Q&A. Is that imagine your child's love language is the first one, quality time. They want you to read to them, to talk to them, to hang out with them, to spend quality time, making eye contact. And your love language is very, maybe you're a negligent parent, don't have time, never have an emotional void. And they're going to look for that fulfillment somewhere else. Sometimes this is what even leads to a child who has mental health challenges because their emotional needs are not being met at home. And once there's that void in the house, they are going to look for it outside. So that's why it's really important that you can balance the two. Okay, next slide. All right, so that's it. And these are just some additional resources. It's important if you want to improve your parenting. Effective parenting in today's world is so critical. You have to keep yourself up to date on what's going on. You have to read books. You have to know what's working or not working. So that's it for me. I just want to summarize with saying that every child is a genius. Many times, parents are the ones who don't know how to harness that and to bring out the best in them.
Very, very much. Thank you so much, Williams. I don't know. There's just so much information. I personally am grabbed today. And I thought I was the ideal. I was the ideal parent. But you know, I see so many things I could improve on as a parent, and I'm sure most of us who are in attendance too would have grabbed a couple of messages that resonate. It's important to mention at this point, everything you've seen or heard will be hosted on our YouTube channel. So please feel free to go back and scroll through to any particular area of interest. Quickly, we'll just take 2 questions at most and we'll round up the session. The first one here says, what can help boost, this is from Great Adin, what can help boost a child's creativity?
Okay, what are the things to help boost a child's creativity? That's a great question. Many times it's for parents not to get in the way. So what I mean by that is, depending on the age of your child, it's really not to get in the way. Let them explore, let them do things around the house. As your child gets a little older, I advise that you let them start learning music. It's amazing the benefits that music has on a child's development and learning. So that's one thing. If you can let them learn an instrument early, it's very helpful. Other than that, just follow their interests and let them, watch things, read books widely. Reading can never fail you. So let a child read as widely as possible. Fiction, non-fiction, all types of books. And even if your child doesn't like to read, the minute you understand their interest, you'll be amazed how to get them to read. My son didn't like reading at one time, but we noticed he loved cars. So we bought him lots and lots of books about cars. And suddenly the struggle to read Yes. Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So I hope I answered that question.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. And the final question here is from an anonymous attendee, and he says, "How do you help a child zone in on a talent?" This particular child has so many interests. Is also good at so many things that it's difficult to get him to focus on one. I actually think I have that problem too, but let me hear, your expert opinion on this.
So it's a fantastic thing. So don't see it as a challenge that it's difficult to focus. If your child has lots of interest, that's fine. What you want to do is to help him or her explore. As children get older, they will start to, maybe they will drop a few, or even if they don't drop it, they will focus on particular areas a little bit more. So schedule for them. You can say, okay, maybe you like to draw, you like to read, you like to play football, you like to do basketball, just allow them to list all the things they like and then help them to do it a little bit at a time without burning out. Because the other downside is when a child tries to do everything, they tend to then burn out and then nothing gets done properly. So just encourage them, put some structure in place, let them know that the world is their oyster. Let them explore. Sometimes you want to get them extra lessons in a particular area. So I found out that my daughter likes to do little videos. So last summer, I got her somebody to teach her how to edit videos. She's not doing so much now anymore, but at the time she was interested in it. So we explored that. Now we're kind of onto something else and it's totally fine. So I think you should just explore with your child and let them feel free to try things. But if you find that if you find that concentrating, and that's a different conversation altogether.
Thank you so much. Again, you heard it all from the founder of Lagos Moms. Please feel free to visit any of their presence online to get more content as it relates to parenting. Be you a mom, a single mom, a parent, in a family. Whatever your case, I'm sure there's always content for you on Lagos Moms platform. Thank you so much, Yeti Williams. You've been awesome. And your session was really packed full with a lot of useful stuff. Thank you so much. And we hope to see you here again very soon.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Okay.
Okay. Okay, so for everyone present, thank you so much for staying on. I won't take you more than 12:15. As I mentioned earlier, remember this is the first of our series of Edu 360 webinars, and we will be organizing much more, content that is very useful for you, our audience. Everything relating to education, anything that is useful for you as a parent, as an adult, as a prospective mother, father. Just keep close tabs. Keep close tabs on our social media presence. Here on your screen, you have our Facebook handle. I'll give you 30 seconds to just quickly take that down. Facebook at unionbankng.com, Instagram at unionbank unionbankng, then Twitter has underscore before the ng. It's also important I announce here that there will be a read along for May 27th Children's Day. I'll have something special. Again, the whole essence of this ecosystem is to raise children that are responsible for the future. So come May 27th, we'll have something special for you on Instagram, and we'll send out all the materials that will get you properly acquainted with what we have lined up for you. So from me, your host, I've had the privilege of anchoring the very first session. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your contributions, and try and stay safe. Bye.